High school football talk. That's right. We talk high school football all the time, but let's talk about some of these schools. It kicked off in some states out west last weekend. We talked about it on Thursday's show, but there are notable games on the docket this weekend. Some of the top programs in the country are squaring off. So let's talk more about it with our friend Steve Montoya of MaxPreps joining the show now. Steve, let's start with the fifth-ranked team in the country, Miami Central. Their season starts Friday night against Vanguard High. Ton of talent on this Central team. But big picture, what stands out to you about this roster as we head into the season?
Yeah, it's a very talented roster, mix of transfers that have come in with returning players. Miami Central has a little bit of a chip on their shoulder as well because they wanted that number one spot last year. They went 14-0. They thought they should be ranked number one overall by MaxPreps. They ended up number two, but they have the talent and the roster to be right back in the mix for another national championship. Five-star junior Armando Blount, he stands out as one of the top players in the country in this junior class. I mean, he had 16 sacks last year for Dillard High School. He'll be transferring into Miami Central. You see LaWayne McCoy right there. He's a Florida State. He's a four-star kid, two-way player. He had the big pick six in that big victory last year against IMG Academy. So Miami Central, one of the most loaded and talented teams in the country. It'll be fun because they go out in a few weeks to play Bishop Gorman out in Las Vegas.
To number 4 we go, Steve, the number one team in the state of Florida, IMG Academy, four-star running back Jared Gibson. He's committed to Texas. Five-star defensive lineman David Stone. You also have Georgia cornerback commit Ellis Robinson. Those are just some of the stars that make up a loaded roster. How does this IMG Academy team compare to some of the great teams we've seen from them?
Yeah, we think they're right up there in the mix for as talented as the IMG team has been since 2020 when they won the national championship. I mean, there's 23 players who is a three-star or better on this roster. I don't know how you can get more talented than that. And so IMG Academy, as you mentioned, has just absolute playmakers on both sides of the ball. They have a tough schedule, as always. They play that national schedule. They don't play in the playoffs, so they seek opponents. They're going to play St. Francis to close out the season. So they have a shot to be as good as that team that was led by J.J. McCarthy in 2020. They're loaded up and down their lineup for sure.
Let's head out west. You mentioned Miami Central is about to play the next team I'm going to ask you about, which is the number 3 team in the nation, St. John Bosco in Bellflower, California. On Friday, they're hosting Liberty High out of Nevada. Now, I'm looking at this defense. You've got Notre Dame linebacker commit Kingston Viliamuasa, USC cornerback commit Marcellus Williams, and Alabama safety commit Peyton Woodyard. This team was the number 1 team last year, but what's the likelihood that we see them at the top spot again in 2023 with this stacked group of talent?
Yeah, you're right. I think they might have one of the most talented defenses in the entire country. And the thing about St. John Bosco is they're going to play Mater Dei. They're in their league, and they're likely going to play them again in the postseason to see who goes on to the state championship. So there's always a chance that St. John Bosco or Mater Dei finds their way as the top team in the country or right there in the mix, because most likely they're going to play each other twice. Last year, actually, Mater Dei beat Bosco in the regular season, but in the rematch, it was actually St. John Bosco who won and eventually would go on to win the national championship. So they start at number 3, but there's always a chance with Coach Jason Negro and his team that they could find their way back to the top.
The Sin City is home to the nation's number 2 team, Bishop Gorman, reigning Nevada State Player of the Year. Micah Alejado, a Hawaii commit, leads the offense, as well as tight end commit Elijah Lofton, who's headed to Miami. They are big play threats. They have a lot of talent up and down that roster. They head to Utah this week to take on quarterback Isaac Wilson and corner Canyon on Friday. Looking at the Bishop Gorman roster, Steve, who stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, it has to be Mike Alejado, their quarterback. He's MaxPreps National Junior Player of the Year. He threw for 3,700 yards last season, 54 touchdowns. He's under 6 foot, so he doesn't get the big time publicity about just being a top tier, high end recruit. But if you want to win at the high school level, he is that guy. He is that good, and we think he's going to have a phenomenal career at Hawaii. He knows how to win. They were very close to being right up there as the top team in the country. They barely lost to Mater Dei. They had that game last year, but ended up losing, and that really cost them the national championship right there. They only had one loss last year. They typically just dominate their competition in Nevada. So it's really their preseason schedule is really what gets them in the running for the national championship. They'll have some games this year that will be right there in the mix, including that one you mentioned just right now. They play Long Beach Poly, and then they play Miami Central as well.
Yeah, our regulars watching the show, they know all of these schools because we talk about these prospects, and that's where they're playing their high school ball. So Blair, I'm curious from your perspective. I mean, you'll be at the Corner Canyon Bishop Gorman game. So as an evaluator, how does being able to watch these games live help you get maybe a better grasp of some of the top prospects that are involved?
It is truly invaluable, Emily. This will likely be the best team that Isaac Wilson faces all season. They played last year in Vegas. So it also helps us compare how they've improved or where the progress has been made. You look at a player like Micah Kaapana, the running back from Gorman, who's committed to Michigan. He's just on the cusp of 4-star status, according to 24/7 Sports. So he hopes to kick off his senior season in a big way. Then you look at the battles on the field, the matchups. Elijah Lofton headed to Miami. He'll be matching up against linebacker Bo Tate, who's headed to Baylor. So you get to see some of those good versus good battles that really allows us as evaluators, as people that are going out to scout out some of these games, to really see, okay, who can be the star at the next level when they do match up against some good players. So it's a remarkable, I think, evaluating tool to be able to see some of these top teams go up against each other.
Yeah, Steve, I heard you start to answer there. I mean, how much does it help when you're evaluating, when as you hear Blair say it, it's good against good. These are some of the top teams in the country playing against each other. How much does that help from an evaluation standpoint?
Yeah, sorry, I was jumping in there. I was just going to say, even that Mater Dei Bosco game last year, I mean, there were 76 players, I believe, on the field with a FBS offer. So if you want to see the future of Saturdays and Sundays, going to one of those games, it's basically right in front of you. That's awesome. So I imagine it's the place to be for anybody looking to find some elite talent for sure. Yeah,
I might have plans this weekend. I got to go see IMG Academy is here in town in Nashville playing Lipscomb. So that's seeing into the future on Sundays. I got one more question for you here. The number one team, of course, we have to talk about them, is Mater Dei. In the 2024 class, 6 of the top 16 prospects in the state of California play for the Monarchs. So, yeah, they have some talent as well. And if I listed all of them, we would be here all day. So I'm just going to ask you this. With all the talent that Mater Dei has on this roster, how big is the gap between them and everybody else?
I think in the top 5 to 6 teams, the gap is not that big. I think once you start getting outside the top 10 or so, then the gap definitely widens. But I think those top 5, 6 teams are right there that any one of them could end up being number one. But we went with Mater Dei because of what you said, just how talented they are. They have Elijah Brown back, their quarterback. He's 29-1 in his career. He's thrown for over 6,300 yards, 76 TDs in his career. So he knows how to win. His lone loss was the one last year to St. John Bosco. So with him in the starting quarterback position was really kind of the nail that put them into this one spot. But Mater Dei has a very, very, very tough schedule. They play St. Francis Academy. Obviously, they're going to play St. John Bosco. So Mater Dei will be tested big time this year. They have a new coach in Frank McManus. He takes over for the legendary Bruce Rawlinson. I mean, Coach Rawlinson will be around helping the program, and Frank McManus has been in the program. But it's still a new coach, new era. We'll see what happens with the Monarchs. And they kick off this week against Corona Centennial. That is a very, very good game one for sure.
A bunch of marquee games throughout the country. That's one of them. You have IMG Academy heading over to, maybe potentially impress Emily out there in Nashville. St. Francis Academy takes on Dylan Rayola and KJ Bolden out in the state of Georgia. Looking ahead a bit, though, Steve, what's one game this season that you have circled on your calendar as a potential game of the year?
Yeah, this is a super tough question because this is a phenomenal year for just out-of-state matchups and just big-time high school games. But the one that I really want to see, and it's right down the street from the Fort Lauderdale HQ, is St. John Bosco, and they'll be playing St. Thomas Aquinas in the Broward County Showcase. The reason I chose this game is because it's California against Florida. Usually when you have California against Texas or Florida, Texas, the hype just gets built up so much because it's basically like the two states are playing each other on the field. And St. Thomas Aquinas, as you guys know, how many players they've put into the NFL and how talented their roster is, and then St. John Bosco, how talented their roster is. It's just a clash of the Titans for sure. And I believe St. Thomas Aquinas has only played 3 California teams. One of them was St. John Bosco back in 2017. They won that game 9-3. They have also beaten De La Salle twice. So St. Thomas Aquinas right now has some bragging rights over California. So this one should be a good one. This one is next weekend, not this weekend coming up, but the weekend following. That one is going to be a great game to watch.
We love the bragging rights, especially when you're representing the whole state. Looking forward to that matchup, Steve. Thank you so much for breaking down the upcoming season. I have some wonderful news. MaxPreps Radio will be back this year, providing live audio at some of the biggest games of the season, including a few that we just previewed. You can tune in live right from each school's team page on your new favorite page, which is maxpreps.com.